What if the child you've been raising wasn't yours? What if that truth was buried under layers of silence, power, and carefully orchestrated lies, until now? Because 5 minutes ago, Buckingham Palace did something it's never done before. It confirmed the unthinkable. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. Not in whispers, not in hints, but in a direct, chilling statement that has sent shockwaves across the globe. Prince Harry is not the biological father of Archie Harrison Mountbatten-Windsor. Let that settle for a moment. This isn't just another scandal. This isn't just another headline in the endless saga of royal drama. This is a fundamental collapse of the story the world was sold. And now, everything is unraveling. It started as a rumor, whispers on obscure blogs, a few anonymous tip-offs that were easy to dismiss as clickbait or conspiracy. But then came the first envelope. A white envelope, hand-delivered, no return address. Inside, a lab report, a name, and 3 initials that changed everything. HRH. The palace didn't react at first. They never do. But behind closed doors, panic. Phones off the hook. Advisors pulled from vacations. Security doubled at Windsor. And Prince Harry, well, we'll get to what happened to him. But here's the thing. The truth didn't just emerge. It exploded. Because someone had been sitting on this for years. Someone who knew. Someone who waited. And someone who decided, now was the moment. Before we dive into what this means, you have to ask yourself one question. Why now? Why, after years of silence, did the palace finally break it? Why not deny it like they've denied so many other rumors? Why issue a carefully worded, emotionally sterile, yet undeniably clear statement that left no room for interpretation? That's what we're going to unravel. Because this story isn't just about DNA. It's about power. It's about betrayal. And it's about the terrifying truth that sometimes, even those at the top don't know who's pulling the strings. Let's rewind a bit. It's 2019. The world is still celebrating the arrival of baby Archie, the first royal baby of mixed heritage. The golden thread between tradition and progress. He represented hope, change, and unity. But even then, something felt off. Do you remember how secretive the birth was? No hospital steps. No eager press. No photo op in front of the Lindo wing like William and Kate. Instead, there was silence. A brief statement. Then a blurry photo, more symbolic than sentimental. The public didn't think too hard. We were told to respect their privacy. But behind palace walls, questions. Uncomfortable ones. And one in particular. Why was the royal medical team never consulted? You're going to find out. And when you do, you'll understand why they kept it buried. Now fast forward. Harry and Meghan leave the UK. They step down from royal duties. They flee to California. Netflix deals, podcasts, Oprah. And through it all, Harry clings to one thing, his identity as a father. Even when he criticized the monarchy. Even when he torched his family in front of a global audience. One thing he never wavered on, Archie. He was his heart, his anchor, his reason. So imagine the moment Harry opened the envelope. Alone. And read the truth. Imagine his world cracking in half. The man who walked away from everything to protect his son, now faced with the possibility that the son wasn't his at all. Here's where it gets darker. The leak didn't just come from outside. It came from inside. Someone close, someone trusted, and someone who saw everything. You'll meet them later in this story. But ask yourself, who would benefit most from exposing this now? William? Charles? A bitter ex-royal aide? Or someone more unexpected? Here's another twist. This wasn't the first DNA test. No. According to one senior palace source, there were 2 prior paternity tests. The first was done secretly. The second was tampered with. That's right. Tampered. Samples were switched. Records erased. And until the original results resurfaced 5 minutes ago, everyone thought the story had been shut down for good. They were wrong. And now, this affects everything. Not just Harry's mental state. Not just Meghan's public image. This touches inheritance, succession, Archie's place in the royal line. And if the allegations are true, it may also touch a man from Meghan's past. A man who's been silent for years. Until recently, when he filed for a name change and listed Archie as his biological descendant in a sealed U.S. court document. Yeah, it's that serious. Still think this is just gossip? Well, here's something no one's talking about. Last week, Parliament held a closed-door session, reviewing the implications of illegitimate royal offspring on the line of succession. Why? Because someone knew this was coming, and the crown needs a plan. Because if the DNA results are accurate, Archie is not entitled to a title, not entitled to protection, and not entitled to the fortune waiting for him in trust. Now, before you jump to conclusions, you're going to see the receipts. We're not here to speculate. We're going to break it down, chapter by chapter. Who leaked the DNA results? What was Meghan hiding? What did Harry know and when? And who is the man behind the curtain, the real father? But more importantly, what happens next? Because as of 5 minutes ago, the palace made a choice. They chose to go public. And in doing so, they may have just torn their own family in two. And here's the craziest part of all. Just as Harry was recovering from the news, a second envelope arrived. No signature, no note, just a USB stick. What's on it? You'll find out. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. What was on the USB stick? That was the question hanging in the air like a thundercloud no one dared to touch. And more importantly, who sent it? Because if you thought the envelope was explosive, what came next made it look like a whisper in a hurricane. But before we play what's on the USB, let's back up, just enough to understand how the first crack in the royal dam finally gave way. Because this leak wasn't random. It wasn't a fluke. It was engineered. The kind of slow, strategic detonation that doesn't just ruin lives, it rewrites legacies. It started quietly, as these things always do. A mysterious email hit the inboxes of two British tabloid journalists. Both seasoned, both skeptical, and both known for sitting on stories until the time was right. The subject line? You missed something in Archie's birth story. Inside was nothing but a string of numbers. A date, a time, a reference number. Most journalists would have shrugged it off, maybe flagged it as spam, but one of them didn't. One of them traced the reference number, and what they found was a medical archive entry. Encrypted, yes, but traceable. From there, it spread like wildfire. What you need to understand is this. Leaks from inside Buckingham Palace aren't like leaks anywhere else. They're not accidental. They're surgical. When something gets out, it's usually for one of two reasons. To test public reaction. To destroy someone. So ask yourself, who benefits from Harry's collapse? Who benefits from throwing Meghan back under the bus? Who benefits from revealing, at this precise moment, that Archie might not be Harry's son? Now here's where it gets weird. That email? It was tracked back to a domain registered in Latvia. Latvia, not London, not California, not even Canada. Why? Because that's where the encrypted servers are. The same kind used by intelligence agencies and, yes, blackmailers. This wasn't the work of an amateur. This was a professional hit job on a royal level. But it gets even darker. Because 1 hour after the leak, the second envelope appeared. Let's rewind to Harry's private home in Montecito. According to an insider, his private chef, of all people, a courier showed up mid-morning. Not FedEx, not DHL, just a man in a gray suit with no badge, no ID, and one sentence. This is for the Duke. The envelope was cold, sealed in plastic, marked, confidential, for your eyes only. Harry took it, alone, walked into his study. 10 minutes passed, then 20, and then, shouting. Glass shattering. A yell that echoed through the walls. But not rage. Despair. And when Meghan ran in, all Harry said was, I need to be alone. Now here's what's wild. The leak didn't hit the press that day. Not yet. Someone gave Harry a head start. Why? To see what he would do with the information. To watch him squirm. Collapse. Beg for time. It was psychological warfare, delivered in plain white stationery. But Harry didn't run to the palace. He didn't call Charles. He didn't even call William. He called Oprah. Let that sink in. In a moment of absolute crisis, the man once known as the most loyal royal turned to an American media mogul before his own family. What does that say? Was it desperation? Or was it because Harry already suspected that the palace might have known? And that's when the USB stick arrived. No postmark. No courier this time. Just there. Slid under the gate. Security cameras caught nothing. No footsteps. No car. Just an object, sitting there like a curse. When Harry opened it, what he saw wasn't just evidence. It was video. 2 files. Dated weeks apart. Same room. Different people. One showed Meghan, visibly emotional, speaking to someone behind the camera. Her words? He doesn't know? He can never know. If he does, it's all over. The second video was shorter. A man, back turned, looking down at a photo of Archie. He says, "Tell her I'm done hiding. If she won't tell him, I will." Now stop for a second. Think about that. Someone had been recording Meghan, without her knowledge, and someone else had been recorded, too. A man claiming he had a right to the truth. Who is he? Well, let's just say, the next chapter will break that wide open. But before we go there, let's look at what happened immediately after the USB was viewed. Because Harry didn't just cry. He didn't just rage. He left. Without telling Meghan. Without security. He drove. Solo. Hours passed. When he finally returned, he said just one thing. "It's not real. It can't be real." And then, silence. Back in London, the palace had already been tipped off. A source deep inside Clarence House confirmed that a crisis team was assembled within 3 hours of the leak. And at the center of the briefing, a document labeled Paternity Emergency Protocol, Line of Succession Review. That's right. They already had a plan for this. A plan. So ask yourself, why would the palace need an emergency paternity protocol unless they already feared this day would come? And who else in that family might not be who we think they are? The leak went live at 6:43 a.m. Greenwich Mean Time. An Australian news site ran it first. Then it was picked up by a Canadian outlet. Within 45 minutes, #ArchiePaternity was trending globally. The palace issued a no comment. But behind the scenes, the damage was already done. Because the leak wasn't just about one document. It was part of a cascade. Emails, screenshots, medical references, lab logos, even anonymized voice recordings between Meghan and a woman referred to only as Elle. That's important. Elle comes back later. And what she knows. We'll flip this story upside down. But for now, here's what matters. The leak was timed, targeted, and personal. It wasn't about the monarchy. Not entirely. It was about breaking Harry. And it was working. He shut down his phone, stopped replying to texts, even to Tyler Perry. He reportedly called his therapist 3 times in one night. And then, he vanished again. Not publicly, but emotionally. People around him said it was like watching a man mourn someone who hadn't died. Because in a way, he had. He was mourning his role, his fatherhood, his truth. And that USB stick? It was just the beginning. Because what Harry didn't know was this. While he was falling apart, someone else was preparing to speak. Someone unexpected. Someone from Meghan's world. And their statement was already drafted. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. What if the palace never reacted to the leak? What if they anticipated it? Because while Harry was spiraling in California, thousands of miles away, within the gilded corridors of Buckingham Palace, something even more sinister was unfolding. A war. Not with guns. Not with declarations. But with whispers. The kind of whispers that ruin reputations. That travel from drawing room to drawing room like wildfire in a drought. That don't just stain legacies, they shatter them. We begin in a room you'll never see. No tourist ever walks past it. No camera has ever caught it. It's called the Maple Room, a private council chamber reserved for off-record crisis planning. And at 4:11 p.m. London time, the crisis response circle gathered inside. 12 people, all handpicked. No aides, no junior press officers. Just the inner sanctum. Communications chiefs, legal analysts, former MI5 handlers, and 3 royals. Yes, 3, not 2, 3. Because while the public thinks Charles and William run the show, there's one more figure, silent, calculating, always watching. And in this meeting, she spoke first. According to leaked transcripts obtained days later, the meeting began with a single line. "The time has come. We knew this was possible. Now we act." Those words weren't spoken in fear. They were spoken in relief. Because the palace wasn't shocked. They were ready. For months, perhaps longer, senior officials had been compiling internal reports. They called it Operation Veil, a contingency plan in case Archie's legitimacy was ever publicly questioned. Documents, timelines, chain of custody reviews on the original birth certificate. Even media response scripts titled, "If Press Discovers X." Let that sink in. They had scripts prepared in case the truth slipped. So again we ask, who really knew? And for how long? Back in the corridors of Kensington, Whispers weren't just speculation. They were strategy. Prince William, usually composed and methodical, had reportedly been agitated for weeks. Not because of the leak, but because of what it might force. Accountability. And worse, forgiveness. You see, while William and Harry haven't spoken directly in months, palace insiders reveal that William was briefed about the envelope before Harry even opened it. That's right. William knew. How? Because one of his private advisors received the email before it reached the tabloids. And instead of calling his brother, he forwarded it straight to the palace legal team. So ask yourself, was that protection or betrayal? Here's where things get more complicated. As news of the leak spread across the palace, so did something else. An internal memo, sent to senior staff under the subject line. Recalibrate all public narratives. Inside were instructions to review all public photos of Harry, Meghan, and Archie. Pull quotes from previous interviews that could now be reinterpreted. Identify inconsistencies in Archie's timeline. Birthplace, hospital, delivery team. This wasn't defense. It was pre-offensive. The palace wasn't preparing to shield Harry. They were preparing to isolate him. And Meghan? She wasn't even in the room. She wasn't invited. In fact, her name appeared only once in the 14-page meeting summary. And it was chilling. Subject M remains a destabilizing variable. She must not control the narrative. Destabilizing variable. Not Duchess. Not mother. Not even person. Just a threat. That's the level of cold, bureaucratic detachment at play. Because when the crown feels threatened, it doesn't bleed. It calculates. But the most shocking revelation from the Maple Room meeting wasn't the language. It was the plan. They weren't just going to wait and see how the public reacted. They were going to manipulate it. Enter the Whisper Network, a chain of discreet, off-the-record briefings to friendly journalists, influencers, and former staff members. People with reach. People with an audience. People who could seed the idea that Harry had known the truth all along. That he had chosen to play the role of father. Not because he was misled, but because he needed a child to maintain relevance in exile. Can you believe that? They weren't defending Harry. They were framing him. And worse. They were laying the groundwork to strip Archie of any claim to royal lineage. Now here's something even more jaw-dropping. The palace didn't just discuss Archie's situation in isolation. They reviewed 3 other birth records during that meeting. 3. Why? Because if this paternity scandal was about to explode publicly, the palace needed to ensure no other royal child was vulnerable to the same claims. Which raises a question they hope you'll never ask. Is Archie the only royal child with questionable parentage? We'll get back to that. But let that possibility marinate for a second. Because once the dam breaks, it doesn't stop at one crack. Meanwhile, across the city, the Daily Whisper, a notorious but well-connected royal gossip site, published a cryptic headline. What if the spare wasn't the sire? It trended globally within hours. And you want to know something disturbing? That headline came 2 days before the leak. Coincidence? Or an intentional breadcrumb from the Whisper Network? Because shortly after, 5 ex-palace staffers began tweeting old photos of Archie with captions like, "Look closely. Eyes don't lie." It was always obvious. Suddenly, the public was being conditioned. Conditioned to believe this wasn't a betrayal of Harry. It was just an overdue correction. Now let's talk about the Queen's diary. Yes, it exists. A handwritten log, maintained for decades by Queen Elizabeth II herself. Each entry, detailed, meticulous, often coded in abbreviations only her closest aides understood. And according to an insider, one specific entry dated May 8, 2019, the day after Archie's birth, read, "Confusion reigns. Birth not as expected. H. Unaware. Staff concerned. M. Evasive. Confusion. Unaware. Evasive." Those are not words a queen would use lightly. And if the queen had doubts from day one, what else did she know? Let's circle back to William. At the time of the leak, he was at an official engagement at a military base. Smiling, shaking hands. But minutes after the story broke, one reporter asked him point-blank, "Have you spoken to your brother since the news broke?" William's response, "That's a private matter. But we are handling it as a family. As a family, not with the family. As." That subtle shift in language told us everything. Harry had been cut out. Not just emotionally. Officially. And the institution was mobilizing without him. But it didn't end there. Later that evening, a senior royal advisor made a call to a very specific media figure. Lady C. Yes, Lady Colin Campbell. Why? Because Lady C has always been the palace's unfiltered mouthpiece. She says what they can't. Within 24 hours, Lady C released a 45-minute video on her YouTube channel titled, Meghan's Secret, It's Worse Than You Think. No sources, no evidence, just implication. But that's all the palace needed. Because implication spreads faster than fact. By now, Harry's team in California was completely overwhelmed. PR firms dropping out, lawyers hesitant to speak on record, and Meghan, reportedly in tears, calling friends, begging to know how much had leaked, what exactly they had. Because if the USB stick was part of a larger batch, the worst might still be coming. And here's where things take a sharp turn. Because just as the palace thought it had control of the narrative, an unexpected voice emerged. Not Harry, not Meghan, someone else. A voice from the shadows. And they weren't whispering. They were about to scream. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. How far would you go to bury a secret? Would you leave your home? Would you cut off your family? Would you rewrite your past so thoroughly that not even your future husband could find the truth? Because that's exactly what Meghan Markle did. Or at least, that's what the evidence suggests. Because when the palace leak detonated and the world's attention turned to Harry's heartbreak, another door swung open. One Meghan had slammed shut years ago. But secrets don't stay buried forever, especially when someone digs them up. Let's go back. Before the wedding. Before the baby. Before the hand-holding and the Oprah tell-all. Before Sussex Royal was even a thing. Before she was the Duchess, she was just Meghan, a rising actress with a taste for ambition, champagne, and connection. But there's one period of her life she never talks about. A strange 18-month window between 2015 and 2017 where Meghan traveled frequently, took mysterious, unrecorded meetings, and was spotted, repeatedly, at Soho House, London. And it's during that very time that everything changed. Why is this important? Because now we know, thanks to the leak, that the man on the USB stick, the one claiming Archie might be his son, was present in London in early 2018. And guess who he was seen dining with? Not just Meghan, but Marcus Anderson. That name should ring alarm bells. Marcus wasn't just Meghan's close friend. He was her gatekeeper. A senior figure at Soho House, Marcus controlled access to the elite. Want to meet a prince? A CEO? A Hollywood fixer? You go through Marcus. And Meghan had his full access. Now pause. Think. Could Archie's biological father have been someone introduced during those elite circles? Someone she knew before Harry? Someone she thought she'd never see again? But here's the twist. This mystery man didn't show up out of nowhere. He tried to contact Meghan before. In 2020, a sealed legal notice was filed in Los Angeles under the alias JD. It was a request for DNA establishment on a minor. The case was sealed, closed within days, and no further documentation was ever made public. Until now, the leak confirmed what many suspected. That JD was the same man from the USB stick. That he believed, back then, that he was Archie's father, and that Meghan, or someone close to her, shut him down with money, lawyers, and a wall of silence. You might be wondering, why wouldn't Meghan just tell the truth? Was she hiding something from Harry? Or was she protecting him? That's where things get murky, because Meghan wasn't always in control. During her time in Canada filming Suits, she lived under near-constant pressure. Pressure to maintain image. Pressure to network, mingle, climb. And behind the scenes, her life was very carefully curated. Several of her former assistants, ones she since distanced herself from, have now come forward. One of them, anonymously, told reporters, there was a period where Meghan was extremely stressed about timing. She kept saying it has to line up. It has to look clean. We didn't understand what she meant. Now, we think we do. Line up. Look clean. Words that make sense when you're trying to match a pregnancy timeline. Let's break this down. Archie was born on May 6, 2019. Standard gestation would place conception somewhere around August 2018. According to records, Meghan and Harry officially began dating in July 2016. But sources say the relationship hit rocky terrain in early 2018, just months before the wedding. Why? Because Meghan took a solo trip to Toronto in February 2018. a trip never publicly explained. And guess who else was in Toronto that same week? JD. Coincidence? Or something more? Now here's where things get even stranger. Following that trip, Meghan reportedly canceled a doctor's appointment in London, an appointment her own personal assistant had booked. She then insisted on switching to a private American OBGYN, flown in for select visits, and rejected the royal family's designated medical team. She also refused to allow the royal birth witness, a long-standing protocol, for Archie's birth. And when asked why, she cited privacy and emotional discomfort. But now we're left wondering, was it really discomfort? Or was it fear? Let's talk about the voice memo on the USB stick. It's only 27 seconds long, but every second is drenched in fear. Meghan's voice is panicked, quiet, shaky. She says, "I don't know what he wants. I told him, Harry can't find out. I can't lose this. Not now. Not when we're finally safe." Safe from what? Who? Him? Or the truth? Because this isn't just about biology. This is about control. Meghan built a narrative. Carefully, brilliantly, emotionally. The American princess. The survivor. The modern royal. But if that story collapses, what's left? Now here's something few people realize. There was a third party who knew about JD long before the press did. Someone inside the Oprah camp. A junior producer on the infamous 2021 interview revealed that 2 segments were cut from the original taping. Why? Because Meghan became visibly agitated when asked about her former close friends in Canada. She reportedly requested that the footage never air. That same producer leaked a memo. In it, a line stood out. Meghan warned us that some people might come forward. She said, "Ignore them. They're not real. They're ghosts." Ghosts. But now, those ghosts are speaking. And they're very, very real. Let's take a breath. Because here's the emotional cliffhanger. Did Meghan believe Harry was the father? At first, maybe. Maybe she convinced herself of it. Maybe she believed that timelines could bend. That love could rewrite biology. But the cracks show. In subtle interviews. In slipped comments. In tension that never made sense, until now. In 2021, Meghan told a journalist, "Motherhood changed me. It gave me purpose. And it gave Harry purpose, too. We both needed something that was ours alone." Ours alone. Words that now ring hollow. Because if Archie wasn't theirs, not fully, then what were they holding on to? A lie? A fantasy? Or a child they both loved too much to question? But what comes next is even more revealing. Because while Meghan was trying to control the past, someone else was unraveling her present. A man who'd stayed quiet, who signed NDAs, kept secrets, and followed orders. Until now. Because he finally broke his silence. And when he did, he brought receipts. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. They said it was destroyed. They said the files were sealed, locked away, never to be spoken of again. But the DNA dossier still exists. And now, thanks to one man's decision to break ranks, it's finally come to light. A document so damning, so carefully buried, that even reading it aloud inside the palace was considered a security risk. So what does it say? And more importantly, why was it hidden for over 4 years? Because this wasn't just a report. It was a verdict, one that could undo the fairy tale, the monarchy, and Harry's very identity. Let's start with the man who revealed it. He's not a journalist, not a royal insider, not even a disgruntled ex-employee. He's a forensic pathologist. We'll call him Drive E. Drive E was subcontracted in 2019 by a private laboratory operating out of Geneva, a lab with royal-level discretion. Think. No paper trails, no names, just barcodes and chain of custody records. He was handed a sealed DNA sample labeled simply, Subject R, 1987, and another labeled Subject A, 2019. His task? Run the match. Determine biological relationship. That's it. No context. No politics. Science only. And the result? Negative. Now, a negative DNA match between a father and son isn't rare in the world of paternity testing. It happens every day. But when that result involves a sitting royal, the implications go far beyond a broken household. They hit constitutional law, succession, security, and public trust in the institution that markets itself as divinely ordained. So what did the palace do with this result? They buried it. Immediately, Drive E was instructed to wipe all copies of the report. The original printout was reportedly burned on site. He was paid triple his usual fee, and he was told, "Forget you ever saw this." But Drivey couldn't forget, because he noticed something off. The two samples had been tampered with. Not corrupted, not swapped, tampered. One had been diluted with a chemical agent that reduces detection sensitivity. In layman's terms, someone tried to falsely manipulate the match. But even with the tampering, the negative result stood, which meant the truth was even more dangerous than anyone realized. Someone inside didn't just want the test done. They wanted it to show a specific result. They wanted to manufacture believability. Why? To protect Harry? To protect Meghan? Or to protect someone else entirely? Now here's where things spiral even deeper. Drive E, racked with guilt, kept a single copy. One encrypted USB key, buried in a safety deposit box under a pseudonym in Zurich. He told no one. Until last month, when a man with a Scottish accent and MI5 credentials showed up at his doorstep with one sentence. "You weren't supposed to keep a copy, Doctor." Drivey knew the game was up, so he went public, through a journalist he trusted. A woman named Marion Wexley, editor of an independent investigative site known for taking on the British establishment. Wexley received the USB on a Tuesday. By Wednesday, her site was offline. Servers attacked, DDoS'd into silence. But she made one backup. And it's from that backup that we now know the full contents of the dossier. So what's in the file? It begins with raw genetic data. Nothing eye-catching unless you're a geneticist. But as you scroll, it becomes undeniable. A 98-page analysis detailing chromosome alignment, allele matches, paternal inheritance markers. The conclusion is bold, underlined, and final. Subject R, 1987, is excluded as the biological father of Subject A, 2019, with 99.998% certainty. Below it, a note in red ink. Recommendation: immediate containment. Media contingency advised. Legal consultation required. Let's pause. That phrase, immediate containment, is not scientific. It's political, and it confirms what we feared. The results weren't meant to resolve a mystery. They were meant to be managed, controlled. Because if this document ever got out, and now it has, it would mean Prince Harry was knowingly or unknowingly raising a child, not biologically his. The royal line has been compromised. The palace knowingly kept this from the public, and possibly from Harry himself. You might be wondering, how could Harry not know? Well, here's the contradiction. Sources inside Montecito say Harry suspected something was off. That's why, in early 2021, he reportedly requested a second, independent test. But Meghan intervened. According to one insider, she said, "If you trust me, you won't need proof. If you need proof, you don't trust me." It broke him. He dropped the request. And the issue was never brought up again. Until now. There's another angle. You remember JD, the mystery man who claims he might be Archie's father? Well, leaked text messages now show that he attempted to submit DNA for matching twice in 2020. Both times, the samples were rejected. Why? Contamination concerns. But the real reason? The palace had already seen the original result. They didn't want a second confirmation. They wanted silence. Let's talk about the psychological weight of all this. Harry built his entire new life around the idea of fatherhood, leaving the monarchy, defying the tabloids, the memoir, the Netflix documentary, all framed around Archie. What happens when that anchor is cut? What happens when the one thing he clung to, the one thing he believed in above all else, is yanked away? We saw a glimpse. The collapse. The silence. The envelope. And now, the rage. Sources say Harry has reopened legal inquiries. He's not just angry at Meghan. He's angry at the palace. Because the leak revealed something worse than deception. It revealed that multiple people knew. And no one told him. Not Charles. Not William. Not even his private secretary. And now, the public knows too. The DNA dossier has been verified by 3 independent experts. It's real. It's damning. And it raises a chilling question. If the monarchy can bury this, what else have they buried? The fallout is already underway. Archie's legal right to royal titles is under review. A quiet motion has been filed with the College of Arms to reconsider heraldic alignment for non-biological descendants. In plain English, they're preparing to strip Archie's royal status. Without a press release. Without a hearing. just quietly removed, as if he never existed. But Meghan isn't staying silent. She's lawyered up, and she's preparing her own counterstrike. A 78-page rebuttal document, a media campaign, and something else. Something far more dangerous. A memoir. Not Harry's. Hers. Tentatively titled, The Other Truth. And one chapter is rumored to be called, The Child Who Chose Me. But what's in that book? And will it protect her? Or destroy her? Because what comes next will change everything, and no one saw it coming. What does it look like when a prince breaks? Not in front of the cameras. Not in a stiff upper lip press statement. But behind closed doors, where titles mean nothing and truth burns like acid. This isn't the fairy tale anymore. This is Harry, barefoot, pale, slouched on the cold floor of his Montecito study, clutching the USB stick like it might vanish if he lets go. He's not speaking. He's not crying. He's shaking. Because 5 minutes ago, he watched a man he doesn't recognize say, "If she won't tell him, I will." And 5 days ago, he thought Archie was his son. Now, he's not even sure of his own identity. Let's rewind, not to the moment the USB stick was delivered, but to the moment after he watched it. According to an anonymous household staffer, Meghan found him sitting on the floor, his back against the bookshelf, eyes vacant. He had watched the footage 3 times. Not because he needed clarity, but because he didn't believe it. She walked in, saying his name softly. He didn't answer. She stepped closer, and then he whispered, without looking up, "Who is he, Meghan?" 3 words. Sharp, quiet, devastating. And her response? Silence. Not denial. Not anger. Just a silence so loud, so heavy, it cracked the atmosphere in that room forever. What happened next? He stood up, walked past her, got in his black Range Rover, and vanished. No security. No phone. Just a man behind a wheel, driving aimlessly down the California coast in the middle of the night. Sources say he drove for hours. Stopped once for gas. Once to vomit. And at sunrise, he found himself parked near Big Sur, watching the waves crash against the rocks. Alone. And shattered. This wasn't Harry the Prince. This was Harry the father. Or at least, the man who thought he was. Imagine that. Imagine being raised in a palace, bound by duty, broken by grief, only to finally escape. And then learn the one thing that made it all worth it might have been a lie. The son you cradled. The eyes you searched for resemblance. The curls you swore looked just like Diana's. Not yours. Not by blood. And maybe, not even by accident. Here's what most people didn't know. Harry had always feared this day. It's why, early on, he clung to fatherhood with a desperation that even his friends found unusual. He talked endlessly about bonding, about protection, about never letting Archie feel like an outsider. Because deep down, Harry was the outsider. He always had been. The spare. The backup plan. The boy the tabloids whispered might not even be Charles's biological son. And now, the cruel irony? He's reliving that same nightmare, but on the other side. Let's talk about the therapist. Yes, Harry has one. A trauma specialist he's seen for over 5 years. And after his disappearance, he called her. 3 times. Left voicemails. No words. Just breathing. Heavy. Unsteady. Broken. When she called back, he answered with this. What if I'm living someone else's life? That wasn't metaphor. It was existential panic. Because for the first time, Harry wasn't the rebel. He wasn't the escapee. He wasn't the bold royal iconoclast. He was just a man in ruins. Back at the house, Meghan was spiraling too. She made 2 calls, one to her lawyer and one to Oprah. And then she locked herself in her bedroom. For 11 hours. No food. No phone. Just her and a handwritten journal she once described as her truth sanctuary. What was she writing? A defense? A confession? Or a goodbye? No one knows. But the staff noticed something odd. Later that night, she lit a candle and placed it in Archie's nursery. Sat there in silence. Not with the child. Alone. Almost like a vigil. Meanwhile, Harry returned home in the early hours of the morning. Didn't go to the bedroom. Didn't go to Archie. He went to the wine cellar. Alone. And when the sun rose, he made 1 phone call. Not to Charles. Not to William. To Doria Ragland, Meghan's mother. And this is where things took a turn. Because what she told him broke him completely. According to a family source, Harry said, I saw a man. I don't know who he is. But he says he's Archie's father. Long silence. Then Doria allegedly replied, "Harry, it's complicated. Not everything is what it seems. But you should talk to her again. Really talk. Not a denial. Not even shock. Just diplomacy. Evasion." And that was the final blow. Because it meant one thing. Doria knew too. The next 48 hours were brutal. Harry canceled all appointments, turned off his phone, and began writing in a journal, one that insiders say was addressed to Archie. A letter? A goodbye? No one's read it. But we do know that inside that notebook, he wrote the words, "I still choose you, even if you didn't come from me." That's love. That's heartbreak. That's the raw core of this story. Because Harry isn't angry because he doesn't love Archie. He's angry because he does. So deeply, so fiercely, that the truth feels like betrayal from every side. Now here's the real twist. While Harry was breaking down, the palace was preparing a statement. Not to support him, but to distance themselves. Because a paternity scandal is one thing. But a future king's brother raising another man's child under royal privilege? That's a constitutional crisis. They issued a draft titled, "Statement on Matters Relating to Lineage and Private Affairs." Dry, sterile, dismissive, and it ended with one cold line. "The matter is of a private nature and does not impact the official line of succession." Translation? Harry's alone. Officially. Permanently. But that wasn't even the worst of it. Because that same day, Meghan received an email. Anonymous. Subject line, "He's coming forward." Attached, a photo. Grainy. Dated 2018. Meghan. JD. Toronto. Smiling. Standing close. Behind them, a stroller. Empty, but symbolic. And across the bottom of the email, a single line. "You can't silence the truth forever." Harry saw it, said nothing, and walked out of the room. But where he went next was unexpected. He didn't run. He didn't hide. He drove to a private clinic and requested a third DNA test. This time, on camera, with witnesses, and a contract that says the results must be public. It hasn't happened yet, but it will. And when it does, the truth will be undeniable. But what comes next will change everything, and no one saw it coming. What if the biggest threat to the royal family didn't wear a crown? What if he wasn't part of the firm, didn't have a title, and had never once bowed to the Queen? What if the most dangerous man to the House of Windsor was someone the world had never heard of until now? Because when JD stepped out of the shadows, he wasn't just revealing a secret. He was detonating a time bomb. And the ticking started years ago. Let's start with the basics. JD, initials only, for now, wasn't royalty. He wasn't a celebrity. He wasn't even rich. But he was once Meghan's world. They met in 2015 at a charity gala in Toronto. He wasn't on the guest list. She wasn't supposed to be speaking. But fate, or something more, put them in the same room. According to insiders, they clicked instantly. Charming, private, intense. He wasn't dazzled by the Hollywood version of Meghan. He saw past the curated Instagram life. He saw her, the vulnerable version, the one that craved security, not status. For a while, he gave her just that, until he didn't. Why did they break up? That depends on who you ask. Some say it was mutual. Some say Meghan left without a word, ghosted him the moment a bigger opportunity came along. But JD's story is different. And now, for the first time, we know what he claims happened. In a recent leaked interview, meant for a private legal deposition but now circulating through encrypted journalist circles, JD says, "She told me she was late, that she didn't know what to do, and then she disappeared." Late, as in, pregnant? That's the million-dollar question. Because timelines are messy. Dates blur. But feelings? Feelings don't lie. And JD felt abandoned. Left in the cold with nothing but a voicemail that said, "I'm sorry, this isn't your story." But now, he's making it his. We know this much. JD remained silent for years. He changed jobs, moved cities, started a new life. Until 2019, when Archie was born. That's when everything changed. Because one look at that photo, just one, set off alarm bells in his soul. "He had my eyes," JD said in the deposition. The same dimple. The same frown when he squinted. "I knew. Instantly. I knew." But what could he do? Meghan was no longer reachable. She was now royalty, surrounded by security, PR walls, legal fortresses. So he did what he could. He filed that infamous sealed petition in LA Superior Court, request to establish paternity. And within 72 hours, it was sealed. Then buried. Guess who helped facilitate that? Tyler Perry's legal team. Yeah, things go deep. Now here's where it gets even stranger. JD isn't just anyone. He once worked in private security. Specifically, he contracted for media shielding services. His job? To make problems go away for high-profile clients. And guess who hired him? Briefly, in 2017? Soho House. The same elite institution that funneled Meghan into elite social circles. And the same network where she met Harry. So think about that. JD didn't just know Meghan. He knew how the game worked. He knew how secrets were buried, how NDAs were enforced, how reputations were manufactured. And maybe, just maybe, that's why Meghan ran. Because JD wasn't a scandal. He was a mirror. The man who knew too much. Let's zoom in on one key moment. February 2018. Meghan flies to Toronto for a private weekend. Her itinerary was sealed. Flight logs hidden. And yet, leaked surveillance footage shows her entering an apartment complex known to be JD's residence. She stayed for hours. Left alone. No bodyguard. This was 3 months before her wedding. 3 months before the fairy tale began. And now? Now we have a timestamp. A motive. And a question. Was that the last time she saw him? Or was it the moment they made an unspoken deal? Fast forward to now. JD has lawyered up. Not to sue. Not to sell his story. But to legally petition for a paternity confirmation, again. Only this time, he's bringing evidence. He has emails, voicemails, photos, and a lab requisition form bearing Meghan's alias, M. Windsor. It was never submitted, never signed, but it proves she considered the test. She knew. She doubted. And then, she ran. But JD didn't. He waited, watched, and when Harry and Meghan moved to California, he followed. Not in a stalker way, in a legal proximity kind of way. He wanted to be close, just in case. Now, some might say that's obsession. Others might call it fatherly instinct. Either way, JD has made his move. He's going public. He's not hiding anymore. And his first public message? Archie deserves to know the truth. And so does Harry. What does this mean for Harry? It's a war of realities. One he's not ready for. Because now there are two fathers. One of heart, one of blood. And the court may soon be asked to decide which matters more. Meanwhile, Meghan is scrambling. She's reportedly reached out to a top crisis PR firm based in New York, the same firm that handled major Hollywood abuse scandals. They've advised her to stay silent, avoid interviews, and prepare for DNA test number 3, the one Harry initiated. Because that test will include JD's sample. And when those results hit, there's no spinning. There's no controlling the narrative. It'll be science. Black and white. Unforgiving. But Meghan has one last card to play. One last name to drop. A name that could explain everything. A name even JD doesn't know. Because here's the thing. What if the man in the video wasn't the only one who could be Archie's father? What if there's someone else, lurking in the background, hidden even deeper? A third shadow. A twist no one, not even Harry, has seen coming. Because what comes next will change everything, and no one saw it coming. He stood at the window, unmoving, hands in his pockets, shoulders stiff, jaw locked. From the outside, Prince William looked calm, composed. Just another duty-bound royal surveying the fog-draped gardens of Kensington Palace. But inside, he was seething. Because while the rest of the world was reeling from the DNA leak, the USB videos, and JD's sudden emergence from the shadows, William had known for weeks, maybe even longer. And now, his greatest fear had become reality. Not that the public had learned the truth, but that Harry might finally see it, too. Here's the thing about William. He doesn't yell. He doesn't throw things. His fury is surgical, quiet, deadly. And when he finally snapped, he didn't shout into the halls of Kensington. He picked up the phone and ordered a lockdown of the palace war room. Yes, it's real. And this time, he didn't just bring advisors. He brought the king's most trusted fixer, Sir Malcolm Wexley. The man who makes scandals disappear. But even Malcolm looked pale that morning. Because this wasn't just a scandal. It was dynastic warfare. Let's rewind. The moment William was informed of the dossier, weeks before it hit the press, he was presented with a decision. Bury it or control it. He chose control, but not the kind that protects family. The kind that protects the crown. Because in William's mind, The monarchy isn't just a tradition. It's the lifeboat in a world sinking in chaos. And Harry? Harry was the hole in that boat. A brother he once loved, now a threat to everything he stood to inherit. So when the DNA dossier reached his desk, William didn't even blink. He read the results, set the folder down, and said, "Tell Clarence." But not Charles. Not yet. Why? Because Charles, with his newfound vulnerability, his illness, his softening, might have tried to protect Harry. But William? William had made his choice. Blood over bond. Let's talk about what William knew. He knew about the second DNA test that was blocked in 2021. He knew Meghan had met JD in Toronto because one of his own private security agents had followed her there. And most shocking of all, he knew about the voice memo. Yes, the same 27-second recording from the USB stick. William had heard it months ago. So why didn't he warn Harry? Why didn't he call his brother and say, "Prepare yourself"? Because William wasn't trying to save Harry. He was trying to watch him fall. Sources close to William say he felt profoundly betrayed by Harry, not just for leaving the firm, but for torching it on global television. The Oprah interview, the Netflix series. Spare. Every word, every line, every subtle dig at William, Kate, the palace staff, cut deeper than Harry ever knew. And when William saw his brother crying in Montecito, he didn't feel pity. He felt vindication. As one insider bluntly put it, William said, "Let him feel it. Let him live in the mess he made." Brutal? Yes, but also revealing. Because under the polished royal veneer, William is done playing brother. He's playing king. But even kings have lines they won't cross. And William reached his limit when Archie became collateral. Privately, he confided in a senior advisor. "The child didn't ask for this. No matter who the father is, we cannot let him become tabloid meat." That's where the contradiction lives. William hates Harry, distrusts Meghan, but Archie? He's just a child. A child now caught in a war of egos, secrets, and political positioning. So William did something unexpected. He sent a message. Not through the press, not through a statement, but through Kate. Yes, you read that right. The Princess of Wales made a discreet call to a woman in Los Angeles. A woman known only as E. A transatlantic contact used during their brief California visit in 2021. The message? Tell Meghan, we will protect the child if she stops now. Simple, chilling, conditional. In other words, Meghan can hold her silence, or she can risk losing everything. Because if William goes nuclear, if he releases everything he has, it won't just be Meghan in ruins. It'll be JD, Doria, Tyler Perry, and Harry, especially Harry. Here's where things take a dark turn. William has leverage. Photos from that 2018 trip to Toronto. But not just Meghan and JD. There's allegedly a third man. Someone who's never been named. Someone who reportedly wired a large sum of money to Meghan's personal account shortly after the trip. We're talking 6 figures. Labeled as consulting fees. But consulting for what? Theories are swirling. Was it hush money? A legal payoff? Or something else entirely? William doesn't speculate. He's waiting. Waiting to see what Harry does. Waiting to see what Meghan releases in The Other Truth. And if the book pushes too far, he'll release the photos. Every last one. Now let's talk about Charles. The king has remained mostly silent during all of this. But William and his father are not aligned on this issue. Charles reportedly wants peace, reconciliation, a quiet ending. But William? William sees that as weakness. Peace doesn't fix betrayal, he told an aide. It rewards it. So William is pushing for a complete severance. No titles for Archie. No invitations. No security. Nothing. And here's the most brutal part. He's already drafted the documents. The paperwork to formally request that Parliament review Archie's eligibility for royal styling under letters patent. If passed, Archie will lose Prince. Permanently. No legal recourse. No appeal. Just erased. And William isn't bluffing. Because he believes something most people don't understand. The monarchy doesn't survive on forgiveness. It survives on power. So now, the clock is ticking. Meghan's memoir is being finalized. Harry is waiting on the third DNA result. JD is preparing to speak publicly. And William? William is holding the match. One flick, and the whole house burns. But what comes next will change everything, and no one saw it coming. Everyone expected Meghan to cry. To disappear. To issue a soft-focus PR statement from a white couch in Montecito, something polished, something safe. Something like, I love my family and I ask for privacy during this time. But that Meghan? The one who used words like healing and compassion on magazine covers? She's gone. Because this time, Meghan didn't just clap back. She rewrote the rulebook. And what she did first was say absolutely nothing. No interviews. No press conference. No Instagram post with a soft light filter and delicate white flower emoji. Just silence. And that silence was lethal. Because while the world speculated, while Harry spiraled, while J.D. prepared his case, and while William stewed behind palace walls, Meghan was moving. Behind the scenes. Quietly. Strategically. And then, one day later, she made her move. Not with a press release. Not with a speech. But with a voice note. The note wasn't public. It wasn't leaked. It was sent directly to King Charles. That's right. Not Harry. Not William. Not her publicist. The King. Delivered by private courier. Signed with her full name. And sealed with a single gold wax stamp, MMW. Inside. A digital voice recording. Just under 90 seconds. And what she said shattered the palace's last line of defense. We've since obtained a transcript of the voice note, confirmed by 2 royal aides and a tech leak from the firm that decrypted it. Here's what she said. You've always underestimated me. All of you. I didn't steal a prince. I didn't lie about my past. I survived it. And if you think I'm going to stand by while you strip my child of his identity, his name, and his place in history, then you don't know me at all. You want war? I have documents, photos, financials, and conversations your own son recorded when he didn't know who to trust. I kept quiet once. Never again. Mic drop. Let's break that down. First, the tone. Not apologetic. Not defensive. Commanding. This wasn't a woman asking for understanding. This was a warning. To the king. To the palace. To William. And it was calculated. Because Meghan wasn't just talking about Archie. She was threatening to expose the family itself. The documents she referenced? Sources say they may include private emails from Prince Charles expressing concern about Archie's skin tone, long before the Oprah interview aired. Internal memos from the palace communications team outlining how to spin Archie's birth if paternity questions ever arose. Bank records showing private payments to silent sources during Meghan's pregnancy. And that line about Harry recording conversations? Yeah, that's real. According to a former Montecito staff member, Harry kept voice memos of his phone calls with senior royals during Megxit. Why? Because he knew this day might come. And now? Meghan has them. But that wasn't her only move. While the voice note made its way to the king, Meghan activated her next defense. Netflix. Yes, again. Only this time, it's not a documentary. It's a dramatization. A mini-series, currently in pre-production under the working title, The Other Truth. Inspired by her forthcoming memoir, written by a ghostwriter who previously worked with a Pulitzer winner. And according to leaked casting sheets, the story will explore the emotional journey of a woman trapped between love, legacy, and lies, based on real events. Let's not pretend. We all know who the woman is, and what the real events are. The series will not name Harry or the palace, but the characters? They're unmistakable. A red-headed husband with unresolved childhood trauma. A cold, calculated older brother. A manipulative gray-haired monarch who confuses tradition with love. A child caught in a secret too big for his name. And Meghan? She'll be played by a mixed-race actress in her mid-30s, with fierce vulnerability and quiet strength. Sound familiar? So why fiction? Simple. Legal protection. Meghan is crafting her truth in a format where lawsuits become difficult, intent becomes murky, and emotional control returns to the storyteller. She's rewriting history, not by denying it, but by reframing it. She's not the villain, not the victim. She's the narrator. But perhaps the most shocking part? She's doing it without Harry's approval. Yep. Multiple insiders confirm that Harry was not informed about the Netflix project until after the pilot was drafted. He was blindsided, according to a former employee. And worse, he's not happy. Because for Harry, the pain is still raw. He's still waiting for DNA test number 3. Still trying to hold on to Archie. Still grieving. But Meghan? She's moved to the next battlefield. And she's doing it alone. Here's where things get even messy, eh? Meghan's legal team has now issued 2 pre-litigation notices. One to JD, demanding he cease all public commentary until the paternity test is officially resolved, and one to the palace itself, warning that if Archie is stripped of his title before confirmation, they'll file an international defamation suit citing racial bias and emotional abuse. She's not bluffing. These aren't angry tweets. These are weapons. And the firm? They're scrambling. Because they never expected her to fight this way. Not now. Not with this much to lose. And guess what? She's not done. Because Meghan's lawyers are drafting a subpoena request for one specific individual, Lady Colin Campbell. Why? Because Lady C, after years of being the palace's attack dog, may have gone too far. In a recent stream, she hinted at a second man from Meghan's past. One not named JD. One who, she said cryptically, holds the real key to the truth. If that's true, we're not just looking at a paternity scandal. We're looking at a cover-up so deep, so tangled, that it threatens the monarchy itself. So where does Meghan stand now? She's isolated from Harry, cornered by the palace, threatened by JD, and hanging everything, on her ability to reclaim the narrative. It's high risk, all or nothing. And if she falls, she doesn't just lose her image. She loses her child, her future, her voice. But she's not backing down. Not this time. Because Meghan knows something most people don't. In a war of perception, silence is surrender. So she spoke. And what she said rattled Buckingham Palace to its very foundations. But what comes next will change everything, and no one saw it coming.